Alright, welcome to another episode of Inspired Content. This time I'm doing things a little bit differently. Recently they released the movie Ready Player One in theaters, and I have not read the book. I had gone to see the movie. And I wanted to do it in that order because I wanted to see the movie and be able to appreciate the movie for the movie's sake before I compare it to the source material. Because taking a book medium where you experience months or years of time, a lot of internal dialogue and complexities that are not easily communicated visually in a 2.5 hour time period, and then putting them on a screen, you oftentimes lose a little bit of it. You can have a good movie, but when you have something to compare it against, it's always going to feel maybe like it measured up short. So I wanted to get the experience of the movie for its own sake, and I'll say I did enjoy the movie. So this is sort of a quick review of the movie, and then I will read the book and do a review of the book. So starting off with the movie, let's just get into the movie then. Basically, this was a good action adventure movie, sort of a coming of age movie. It's got some things going for it, like the kid who kind of grows into himself during the course of the movie. But overall, I'd say this is just a basic quest style story. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's sort of a portion of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I mean, you've got the sort of introduction of the character, the circumstances they're in, the thing they have to figure out for the first step of the quest, the thing they have to do for the second step of the quest. Usually a companion in trouble, rescue them, and then resolving the final quest in the confrontation with the opponent. And that's pretty much how this movie went. It was a quest story. I would say Harry Potter is in there because you have to puzzle through, like, how can we solve this knowing what we already know from the stuff before. And I would say, it's an orphan kid, and it's sort of like a Sorcerer's Stone at the end that he's going for. But it's got aspects of the Indiana Jones quest to it. Very close in layout, actually, with the Staff of Ra, getting the light shined onto the part of the map they need to find the Ark, rescuing Marion, and then the final get the Ark, get captured, confrontation, resolution aspect of the quest. And so it's very, very much along those lines. But I'm not gonna lie, I feel a little robbed at the end with the final quest. I mean, they didn't have to figure it out. Somebody else figured it out first. And I feel like half the fun of this was trying to figure out the clues, and so to have that one already figured out kind of felt like a ripoff. It felt like a ripoff to just have it handed to them and not have to puzzle out the riddle of it. But it also felt like, let's hurry this up. We need to finish this quickly, so we'll just make this one already partly resolved. And so I felt kind of like it was the author had hit a point where they couldn't figure out how to make an intriguing quest riddle out of it. So, and maybe he could, I don't know. Maybe maybe he was sticking to a template that he had built himself with some of the other quest stories he was basing this around. I don't know. But I kind of wanted a third riddle to puzzle out. I wanted that sort of moment where, like, he could solve it because nobody else could, and that made the difference. And I guess they sort of did it with the real trick to the resolving that last confrontation. But I don't know, it's just, I feel like I wanted something different for that last bit. But overall, it wasn't like a huge detractor. It's not like it's like it ruined the movie for me. It worked for me. It just, I would have liked a little bit more play with that. But I think the other thing that bothered me about that was just that it was just the people who figured it out didn't figure it out. They just threw enough people at it. When you've got an army of 13 billion people, you could just throw up against the wall. Eventually you're going to just bulldoze your way through the problem. I thought that was just a cheap way to do it, but I mean, I guess it's, if the villains are going to solve that situation, it's good to have them do it in a cheater kind of way. But alright, so as I look at that though, the overall feeling about the villains in this movie, it's one of those things where, like, I don't feel he was the villain. And I've not really watched a lot of reviews of it because I didn't want to spoil it, but my feeling of the villain is he's really the villain's right-hand man. He's not... He responds like somebody who's doing this because it's important to his boss that things go a certain way. So it's... He has a feel on it. I'm trying to remember the name of the character. I think I wrote it down here. In the Netflix Daredevil series, the Kingpin character has a right-hand man. His name is James Wesley. And I feel that this main villain in Ready Player One felt more like a James Wesley kind of character. And I feel part of that was he comes off really more of a loyal assistant and a right-hand man. His Kingpin, though, it took me a little while to kind of figure out where that was. And I can't really say whether that's the board of directors or if it's just capitalism in general. Because there's this sense that they're people he reports to. They're faceless people, and they're cold, indifferent, and not connected with the culture and the community. But by the same token, it is a sense that the villain in this is seeking profit at the cost of life and the ability of the population to decide the course of culture. It's looking at the world as populated with domesticated animals that you tend to. And you tend to it through attempts to control the supply end of the supply and demand equation. And so they try to control the oasis, which is where culture is growing within this story. It's where, people do all sorts of things, and so the attempt to control that end of the spectrum and make it a consumerist process seemed like that was the real villain. And the character we see as the villain in this is really controlled by that force. He is the henchman of that attempt to control the demand end of the spectrum. The supply end of the spectrum. supply end. He is the attempt to control the supply end of that spectrum. So I feel like he wasn't the villain. The villain was more faceless than that. It was a force. I also think it was interesting that when he came to the end, I think it's appropriate at the end where this character comes to the doors of this truck and opens it up. It looked to me, and maybe it's just because I don't read people well sometimes, but it looked to me like there was this real moment of awareness of like, oh wait, yeah, I'm here threatening a kid with a gun because he was better at a game than I and my staff were. It's sort of like that moment of realization where you got in a horrible argument on the internet and you realize you've been screaming at a 12-year-old because they're stupid. And it's like, you feel kind of like a jerk and realize you took it maybe just a bit too far. And I felt like there was a bit of that kind of, oh, whoa, wait, I'm really thinking about killing somebody over a game. And I want to kind of believe he also sort of maybe realized that, here's this kid who demonstrated skill and ingenuity to do something others couldn't do. And maybe there's a little bit of respect for that. I mean, like, wait, this kid solved all this and we couldn't? Dang. But, I mean, I don't know if that's there or not. But, I think it's good in the sense of like a Goonies style kids adventure movie where the kids pull through and people realize certain things about what they're doing, and the villains sort of get caught in a way that's not like truly evil, hateful people. They're not like monochromatic, just absolutely sociopathic monsters. It's just sort of like a realization that like we're kind of punching down. So it's like, oh, well, yeah, okay. As much as it means taking over the most powerful economic force in their world, there's sort of kind of like a stealing candy from babies aspect of it where it kind of loses its appeal. But I think that's an aspect of the movie that I kind of appreciate. I don't know that it happens in the book, and I'll find out, I guess. But I think one of the other things that's important to realize about this movie, or at least something I thought about this movie, I don't know if it was ever intended to be this way, or was any part of the idea of this movie, but I feel like this movie is sort of talking about, and like a lot of times you see science fiction often talks about events of our current time in a kind of a costumed way. It dresses up current issues in a way that lets us be distant enough from it to see it more clearly when it's played out in front of us in a different setting with different characters and a different tone. And I think overall the sense I got from this one was this was about the internet and in its own way about sort of like net neutrality. And I know it sounds like a bit of a stretch, but the reason I feel that way is, in this case, like the internet is a thing that's created for a purpose, a tool. It's a means of communication between institutions. How Usenet was originally set up. But it became so integral to our society that I can't apply to a job. I can't, if I'm going to file my taxes, I do it on the internet. If I want to apply to a job, I have to go look online for a form. If I want to, navigate to a new location, if I want to, the internet enables connectivity to a degree that it wasn't originally intended to encompass. It's where so much of modern life occurs, and so it's also the area in which culture grows. It's you can't really undo that. You can't take that back. If you just remove the capabilities of the internet from culture, we could probably survive, but it's going to be a hard fall. We use the internet for news, jobs, social communication, reviews of movies. People make their own original content. We look at characters like H in this movie, and H strikes me as a content creator. They're a YouTuber. They're a Instagrammer. They create a thing that has an audience, and they can make their living off of doing that. And so it's an aspect of using the Oasis, or in this case, the internet, to be a content creator. And then you look at that, streamers and YouTubers, and you look at the idea of net neutrality, trying to put the tiered system, like the villain did when he was an intern, where he talks about, you can have different levels of people having access. So, since it's Oasis, the top level could be water, and then you'd have bronze and silver keys or stuff like that. And so it's just kind of like he wants a tiered system as who's allowed to have what a level of access. And there again is that question of the fast lanes on the internet and making it a tiered caste system of who's allowed to control content creation, and making it a consumerist system where all the sheep masses consume what you dish out because you're a higher level. You are a content creator and they're a content consumer. And so I feel like there was that part of that narrative going on in there. And there is sort of like the corporation being a cross between the Asian virtual money farms in gaming worlds and places like BuzzFeed, where they buy up people to create for them. You see that with the Sixers, where they are, people who have been offered a position by the company to do things for that company. You see that some of the characters are offered sweet deals, but you also have those money farms where you've got people who are put into sweatshops essentially to farm virtual coin in a World of Warcraft kind of game. And so it's just sort of like this conglomeration of those aspects of that. I feel like it's not fully in love with the idea of the internet. I think it's funny where they had that central quest where a creator who hates his creation. And I think to a certain respect, this movie looks at the Oasis / internet in that light, where as a content creator, there's a beauty to more people being able to create content and be freelancers and creators in their own right. But by the same token, there's that, are we losing our connection with the outside world? In this case, in the story, the world is falling apart, and it's because people spend all their time avoiding the real world. And so at the end, they kind of try to explore that option of, maybe going back to the real world. But it does it in a way where it's not fully saying the Oasis is bad, because they don't dismantle it and say the world is better for having dismantled the Oasis. But they do say you can't hide from the rest of life. And so they do treat it sort of like, yes, the internet can be, or the Oasis can be too much if taken too often as a sole means of interacting, culture growth, and socializing and activity. But it's not, it's become important to all of us in a very core way that you can't take it out without breaking culture. You can't take it out without breaking the lives and population around you. So you can't dismantle the internet. So you have to find some kind of compromise. You can't, they do it in a way that opposes monopoly control of culture and instead lets the culture of content creators grow by preventing corporate farming of the public production. The ability of the public to create things for themselves, about each other, and share it with each other is more important than the consumeristic farming of culture. So, somewhere in there, hopefully there's something useful. This might take a little bit of editing to get it right, but that's sort of the feel I got off of this movie. And so, while on a deep level of thinking about what it means about content creators and culture and our relationship with the internet and the outside world, you don't have to view it that way. It's just a good adventure movie. And so you can take it lightly, or you can take it looking at it more hard and examining the implications and thoughts behind maybe some of that aspect. Now, I don't know if I'm inventing some of those, if that's my own mind playing that game with me or not, but that's sort of what I got. So, the next part of this is now to read the book and see what differences it makes. I will read this book and see if it makes any differences in how I think, or if it has a different message that's worth exploring and seeing, and what differences and opinions I get from this. So I will see you for that in a bit. Alright, take care of yourselves.